And just think, right? Every person that you think is super wealthy, you remove Bill Gates, you remove Warren Buffett, everyone else on that list created their wealth in the last 20 years. So if you're 19, 17, whatever, literally the sky is the limit.
I got $1 billion mindset, steady as the flow, navigating on my time spent, letting us know. $1 billion.
It's funny, I know a lot of people that have gone through your sales training and they say it has been absolutely game-changing because you changed their mind on how to approach the entire business, on just how to approach business and sales, period.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because a lot of folks are still running out there and they're thinking of themselves, right? And they're losing deals left and right. And I come across this all the time. When I finally get onto the phone with the seller and they're just at the end of the transaction, they're telling me, you're so nice and you're so kind and so many people have been calling, and I'm wondering, what the heck are the other people saying to you? Like, what are those conversations sounding like, and are they really working? I
think it works. I wouldn't say it works well. I wouldn't say it's effective, but it works, right? I mean, like, if you look at the poker analogy, right? Like, you can play 6-7 offsuit every hand, and you'll win hands. You will. But man, you can lose a lot of money in the long run. I'm a very big fan of game theory, and I look at a lot of that, right? Like, there's things that work, and there's things that we do that will cost you sales. I'd say that to our mentees. Like, if you do this, just know, like, you can lose the sale. But in the long run, you will close more sales.
Let me ask you this, right? As you have been growing your business, right? You've been growing several businesses, multiple. What has been one of the toughest challenges that you've encountered along this road, right? Because you came from the traditional safe, W-2, you stepped into the absolute unknown wild, wild west of entrepreneurship, and as awesome as it is with the results on the end, there's a lot of fires in between. What has been one of the largest fires for you?
So the two biggest challenges, everyone thinks like marketing, like how do I find sellers? How do I talk to sellers? Like that's not the hardest, right? Like you can learn from YouTube, you can learn from a mentor how to find sellers. You can learn from us or from somebody else how to talk to sellers. But the two biggest challenges is your work-life balance, right? Which no one really talks about because everyone here says grind, grind, grind. Right? So work-life balance is the first one. And the second one is managing people. And one of the reasons why I quit Intel is because I know I was a grunt. I was a grunt on the front lines. I actually loved being a grunt on the front lines because that meant I could just go home and be done. The path of an engineer is to move up and eventually manage people. And I had zero interest in managing people. Zero, right? I don't want to deal with people. My personality profile inherently says I don't want to talk to people. That's my natural profile. Once you become an entrepreneur, you learn that the only way to grow and buy time back is through people.
Exactly.
And so when you're managing people, this is kind of what you and I were talking about before we started, was that we are emotional beings. We're unpredictable. I don't know what might set you off today. I have no idea. What motivates you today might not motivate you tomorrow. So there's all these variables you got to balance and juggle, which is fine if it's one-to-one. And it's even fine if I'm managing 2 people. I got over 100 people here. I got to balance all these egos and emotions and all this and that. It's not simple.
Yeah.
So that's the greatest challenge, but I relish it because for me, I love challenges.
Hey, there we go. It's funny because I was interviewing Cody a little earlier today, Cody Barton, and I was asking him a very similar question essentially as what's been one of the challenges since you started scaling that you've been running into. Same exact answer. Yeah. He said it was the people, right? And I've been able to see it just spending time out here in Arizona for the last week and really seeing how a mix of energy in a room, it's a cocktail for potentially something amazing. And at the same time, you put a few bad seeds in there and things come crumbling down. It's like a cancer in the system. And it's up to the leadership to recognize that, pull it out, and replace it with something better that can possibly have it improve. And then as you start to evolve, the challenge is, sounds like we're saying, where it's evolving, now the cocktail needs to change. The formula has to change, and the same people that worked yesterday might not work today.
Yeah, there's that. And also the leader you have to be to manage one person is different than the leader you need to be to manage 3 people. It's different than the leader you need to be to manage 50 people. You got to constantly grow. And I think that's the most valuable skill, but no one really talks about it because it's not sexy.
No.
But that's the most valuable skill. Of all the skills, that's the most valuable skill.
Right. I mean, Andrew Carnegie, right? He credited a lot of his success to his management of people, his management skills. And he said, listen, why would I bog myself down with a lot of this when I can go and find the person that I could put on the job?
Exactly.
So I love that you developed this team here where you get folks to do that. So now that you are starting to bring people in and you're starting to grow large, and you said like half the folks weren't essentially with the culture of wholesaling, right? Where is it that you see the business going? Where are you trying to direct things going forward?
This is going to sound, I don't know, kind of crazy, but that's not even my focus. Right? I mean, I'm looking at my next ventures, right? Like, what am I doing next? We've got our culture here. We got our group here, and it's ride or die. Like, you can be with me or you're not. Like, I can't worry about that. I've got this purpose. I've put here on this planet for a reason. I'm going to go crush things, right? So, I mean, one thing I want to do, you can see what we built out here. I'm trying to catch Joe Rogan on Spotify.
Ooh, I love it.
I'm trying to catch Grant Cardone in sales training. Like, I've got all these other things I'm focused on. I'm going to keep recruiting the people, building out the systems, processes, and all these other things, but I can't worry about who's with me and who's not. That's not, if I do that, I mean, when am I going to sleep? All I can do is just, you know, be who I am and attract the people that want to be with me. If you're not meant to be on this mission, that's okay.
Just a reoccurring theme that I've been seeing nonstop since I've been coming to Arizona, since I've been out here hanging out with good people. It's the leaders that I've been finding out here all have an extreme sense of clarity, a very strong sense of clarity on who they are and what their desires are. At what point did you start to gain this clarity, and what do you do if you ever start to lose clarity? How do you regain focus and regain clarity?
What helps definitely in reaffirming clarity is affirmations. You know, I have my affirmations, and I should be looking at every day. To be honest, I'm not. You know, like when I was consistent, I was looking at every weekday morning. Mm-hmm. I'm not. But as far as developing the clarity, I'm just a super competitive guy. So I just know who's ahead of me, and it's just that. See,
but that's good. So you have this self-awareness. I can speak from experience, right? In the beginning, as I was getting started, you know, I'm seeing the rock stars that you're bringing on your show, and I'm like, man, Max Maxwell's doing this. Like, that's cool. Like, let me start trying that. And then, like, Carlos Reyes is doing this. Like, oh, let me start. And before I knew it, I was trying to be like 12 different people. And I'm calling the seller one day, trying to sound like one guy, and I'm trying to sound like Keith Everett. And then I was just like, what the hell am I doing? This isn't making any sense. And then when I stopped and really narrowed it down, and you actually helped bring a lot of focus to this, because you have a personality type that isn't necessarily that career salesman. You had your style, and it was working. It was working for you, and you were being you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think gets lost sometimes. So I try to emphasize just when I find individuals that are very clearly winning from being themselves, and that's the path, to walk that path. If you truly want to emulate someone, you don't emulate them by doing what they're doing on the outside. Emulate what they're doing on the inside, which is being them. Yeah,
emulate their behaviors, emulate their habits, but you don't have to be them. You know, you hear these things, right? Comparison's a thief of joy. Mm-hmm. And you hear these guys like, I just want to be the best version of myself. And I get all those things. For me, I love seeing people kicking my butt. I love that there is upside, right? Because I don't look at it as like, man, he's doing this, he's doing that. God, that sucks for me. I look at that and say, okay, so Joe Rogan did 100 million on Spotify. Mm-hmm. That's possible. Now I can chase it.
See, that seems to be like the entrepreneurial spirit. That's something that essentially can't really be taught. That's something that I think you're born with. I had the same premise. I came from the world of parkour. One of my good friends, I grew up with him since kindergarten, world-class athlete, runs with the Red Bull, amazing. And when I would train with him, people would say, they put him on this pedestal. And I used to just think, well, if he could do it, so can I. Yeah. I had no business thinking like that. And thank God I didn't die. But that was the thought process. And it actually leveled me up much faster. Right. So do you find a lot of value in going and putting yourself around people, like you said, that are almost like kicking your butt, that are much better than you? And
all day, every day.
Nice. So you actively would go out of your way to go find those people if they weren't near you?
Yeah. So I'm in a mastermind, right? I'm in Collective Genius.
Oh, nice.
And one thing that's really cool in there is there's a whole bunch of people kicking it. So they got that. I mean, in town, right? We got Jamil, we got Pace, we got Brent Daniels. I know I'm leaving people out. They got all these guys in here, and at any time I can call them up, say, hey, what's going on? Here's what I'm dealing with. It's the greatest blessing. Part of what you're doing here, you know, you're in Pace's mastermind. Right? You're doing this podcast. You're putting yourself in the right room. We're all leveling up through personal development to qualify ourselves to be a next room where we're the smallest fish. I've been in too many rooms where I was the biggest fish, and I hated it. All we can do is level up so that we can qualify to be the bottom guy in the next big room.
Man, I like that. I've never heard anyone put it like that. And your mindset is pretty competitive, it's pretty strong, it's pretty straightforward and clear. Mm-hmm. What are you doing on a day-to-day to cultivate this mindset? Was it something that was purely you were born with, or is it something that you actively, consciously had to create for yourself?
So there's a book, Tiger Mom. Basically, it was an Asian lady talking about like the screwed up things Asian people do to their kids. And the way they screw up their kids is like, you got to get good grades. getting good grades is not an option, right? If you don't get good grades, like, you're dead to me. What happens when you raise your kids that way? They're competitive, they're motivated, they also have low self-esteem. Those are the three things that happen. I think that this was programmed into me by my parents, being the oldest son in an Asian family. Like, you need to go be successful because you're going to take care of your parents when they retire. You're going to take care of all your younger brothers, right? Like, it's like if any of the 5 brothers don't do well, you're responsible for them. Like, it's been programmed from us from day one. Like, you're carrying the family name, the legacy. You need to do all these things. Expectations were super high.
So essentially, like, your upbringing really did have a good role in playing like the personality traits that are exhibited today. How did your family and parents feel when you made that transition, essentially stepping away? Yeah.
They hated it.
It's like cut it down right away?
Oh yeah, they hated it. I mean, they're like, why would you do this? You got a good job. I was making $85,000 a year, plus benefits and all this other stuff. I was working 25 hours a week, if that, working at Intel. And my mom would look at me, she's like, you're crazy. You got this great job, steady job. Why would you walk away from that? It's like, it's not for me.
There's something there, like, that's a common trait, right? Because it's you knowing you. Like, and I can't emphasize that enough. Like, you on the inside said, like, listen, I got to live with me. Mm-hmm. I got to live with my life. I got to live with my decisions. I'm playing all out based on my rules, right? If I'm going to lose, let me lose on my terms. If I'm going to win, let me win on my terms.
Exactly.
Right, let's imagine 20 years down the road, where's the business, and are your kids a part of that business as well?
20 years? I don't even know. I mean, hopefully in 20 years, I'm hanging out with like Elon and Bezos, right? Who knows?
Hey, let's hear it.
Right? Like, who knows? Like, anything can happen in 5 years. And, I'm going to answer this question another way. So I was running with somebody. He drives down. He's a pilot. He drives down from Prescott on Fridays to run with us, right? 2 hours he drives down to run with us at 5:40. So you see what time he's waking up. And he asked me this question, like, Steve, if you took everything you know today and you put it in your 18-year-old, where would you be today? I said, I'd be eating Grant Cardone's lunch, right? And I'd be hanging out with Gary Vee. And that sounds crazy. But the stuff that you and I know today, you take that 20 years, imagine all the progress we can make, right?
Right.
Because Grant Cardone wasn't relevant more than 10 years ago, right? He wrote his first book around 2010, 2011. Gary Vee started his YouTube channel around 2005, 2006. So I'm just putting that in context. And with how fast everything's changing today, 20 years is a really long time.
It is. Anything
can happen in the next 20 years, right? That's the reason why I said Amazon, how relevant was it 20 years ago? Not really relevant. Like, that's the reason why I'm answering this question this way. Anything is possible in 20 years.
I like that, right? Because earlier before I came out here, Pace gave you a great compliment. And he said, Steve is probably one of the most consistent people I effing know on the planet, right? He was just like, dude, that guy, like, will put it down and then he will, like, burn a hole through whatever he's doing because he will just do it till no end until it's complete and it is just burrowed in. So, like, you're planting seeds and then you're watering it and you're watching it grow. And ultimately, that's what it takes. You have this understanding and the concept of the value of compound interest and time.
Yep.
Which a lot of, like, in our world, like, I mean, I'm a product of the new generation. It's instant gratification. Yeah. There is no more understanding of delayed gratification. There is no more understanding of cultivating something today for what it will bring you 20 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
So it's insane to listen to you say that because as you say it, I'm like, man, this guy has clarity. Like, shoot, he's going to be hanging out with Bezos and, like, Elon.
I mean, I don't know about Bezos and Elon, but I'm just saying, like, 20 years, like, literally anything is possible.
Right.
So the kids can do whatever they want.
Oh, nice.
Right? So, my hope for them is that they're going to be entrepreneurs. That's my hope for them. I want them to be able to live the life that they want. Right? I want to empower them and help them live the life of their dream. Whether it's working with me or not, that's my hope for them.
Essentially, when it comes to raising the kids, do you believe up until a certain point while they're under your roof, basically, hey, your freedoms will be somewhat limited. I am going to enforce that you learn this stuff. Later on when you're older, you can do whatever. Or is it going to be, you know what, make your own decisions from day one. And if you want to come this way, come follow me.
Yeah, up until they're 18. It's my way or the highway.
Okay. I agree with it. I mean, I'm biased. I was raised that way. I appreciate the way I was raised. And I look at my counterparts and the kids that had all the freedom. I just look at them now. They don't necessarily know how to cope. And
just put them in the trash.
Yeah, like they don't have the skill sets. Like Robert Kiyosaki called them snowflakes.
Yeah.
And like I'm just like, I never want to say anything bad about anyone. It's not my personality type, but I'm like, yeah, you guys are soft because life is hard. No matter what, no matter who you are, life's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing you any favors by allowing you to be brittle and weak. At least let me toughen you up while I know I love you. I don't know what the rest of the world thinks about you. At least in the house, I know I care about you.
So I'll love you unconditionally, right? That's the message, and that's 100% always on point. So Jordan Peterson, some people hate him, but one thing I loved from him was my job as a parent is to prepare you for the real world. The last thing I want is to get out there and be shocked, right? I'm not going to shelter you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to help you. But at the end of the day, my job as a parent is to prepare you for the real world, right? I had my kid put a VTO together yesterday, right? She's 10 years old. We're talking about core values, core focus, and all this other stuff. And it seems crazy, but she's asking for help. She sees what mom and dad are doing, and she wants to learn it.
Man, I used to work with kids. Some of the best kids I had, the parents were strict, a little bit more strict. It wasn't militant. It wasn't total dictatorship. However, there was a clear hierarchy of power, and the kids respected it. There was a clear difference, especially over time. Given the amount of time, the ones that had the stricter upbringing always excelled further than their peers.
Yeah.
So I love that. I have 2 questions that I always ask everyone that comes on the show. Can you name 2 books, and we're not going to let you use Rich Dad Poor Dad because everyone's used that book, but can you name 2 books that have been complete paradigm shifts for you? After you read these books, your mind never quite went back to thinking the same.
Miracle Morning. I would say The Road Less Stupid is profound. Never Split the Difference. That's
a good book, yeah.
Before I started teaching sales, that was one that made a big difference in my life.
Yeah.
So I would say probably Never Split the Difference is one that changed a lot of our approach in talking to anybody.
Actually, that book I owe a lot. It just teaches you human communication.
Mm-hmm.
And when people don't understand sales, I'm like, okay, well, you just don't understand how to talk to another human. You just don't get that part. Because even when people ask me what's a good sales book, I actually recommend Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. I'm like, read this. And they're like, that's not a sales book. I'm like, really? Go read it and let's have another conversation. Yeah. Here's the final question. And this one's really my favorite one. Let's imagine tomorrow you wake up and you forget everything you know. You forget all the experiences you've had, the books you've read, the people you've met, the competitions you've won, the sales you've done. Every last bit of information is wiped from your mind. Mm-hmm. However, upon waking up, you're not scared, you're not freaking out. It's not a Saw movie. You're in a safe place. You're coming to consciousness. A thought begins to bubble to the surface. That thought that bubbles to the surface, you immediately begin to accept it, and you don't doubt it. You take it as truth. You run with it full-heartedly. What would you want that first thought to be that would now be essentially the foundation of everything else to come?
Thought? Mm-hmm. Is my personality the same?
Yeah, let's say your personality is the same.
The thought is...
It's an interesting question, by the way. No one's ever asked, would my personality be the same?
Well, because I'm asking this because my greatest strength is my irrational confidence, right? Because that's the one thing. Like I've talked to my friends about this. Like, if there's one thing I could pass on my kids, it's not athleticism, obviously, right? It's not brains or work ethic or grit. It's none of that. If there's one thing I can pass on my kids is confidence. So that's what I'm saying. Am I going to be the same person? Because if not, then confidence is the first thing I would instill. And that's why you can take crazy actions, right? So if everything else is the same, it would more or less be, go get what's yours. Go chase entrepreneurship earlier. I didn't chase it until after I read, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Even though I was doing it as a kid, I was leasing my calculator that had all the math answers because I would do well in math, put all the answers in my calculator. Whoever was the highest bidder got my calculator. I was selling candy. I got in trouble for selling candy. So I was always hustling something. Chase your dreams. Be an entrepreneur. Go get what's yours.
That's actually really cool. And I could absolutely see you getting up from that day and just rebuilding everything.
Yeah.
Especially if you have no doubt about it and you're not distracted by any other thought in your mind.
Yeah.
You'd probably build even faster, just as fast as you're building now.
I don't know for sure, though, because the chances I'm willing to take today are different than the chances I would take 27-year-old me. Right? 27-year-old me was invincible, had no responsibilities. 41-year-old me has weaknesses. So
it's a give and take.
Yeah.
That's why you said you would start earlier. And I know a lot of my audience, you guys are still 17, 18, 19, early 20s. Listen to Steve right now. He's telling you, go for it, right? You have nothing to lose. You have everything right now. You have your youth. You have your mind. You have connections. The fact that you're listening to this podcast already shows that you're slightly different than most. Yeah. So run with it.
And just think, right? Every person that you think is super wealthy, right? You remove Bill Gates, you remove Warren Buffett. Everyone else on that list created their wealth in the last 20 years. So just think about that. So if you're 19, 17, whatever, literally the sky is the limit.
So Steve, for people that are now listening to you and this is their first time learning about you, where can they go to find you?
So there's a couple different places. There's Instagram, steve.trang. There's a Real Estate Disruptors podcast on Apple, on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or disruptors.com, where a lot of our content as far as the, different ways you can work with us.
If you got anything of value from this episode at all, I want you to reach out, tag Steve, tag myself, share the episode with a friend, share with whoever you think could benefit from listening to something like this so that you can all continue to grow. And if you struggle at all, like I know we barely scratched the surface, but I am telling you, Steve is a wizard with sales. I have friends that have gone through his sales training. They are day and night different. So make sure you reach out to him, connect. Steve, thank you for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun. You asked some really, really good questions.
Appreciate it, man.
Steady at the flow, navigating over times, man.